Hello FlossTube, my name is Leann and I am leann.stitches here on YouTube and on Instagram. You can also find me as Forbidden Fiber Co. on Instagram and Facebook. Today is Monday, January 12th, 2026, and this is my 58th FlossTube. It's been a while since I filmed a regular FlossTube. I think early November, maybe mid-November. And then things just got crazy busy at work. And so I figured I'd jump right back in with my whip parade, which I filmed and posted on January 1st. And we have a lot of new people here from that whip parade, and I'm so excited to see you. Just to tell you a little bit about myself if you're new here, or if you don't know, I live in West Tennessee with my husband and my 3 children. We live in a small town about 45 minutes north of Memphis, and this is where my husband's from. I'm originally from San Diego, California, a little tiny town in the mountains that nobody's ever heard of unless you live somewhere near that little tiny town. And we've lived a little bit of all over the US. We've lived in California, we've lived in Virginia and New Jersey, and now we've been in West Tennessee for about 8 years, I think. And we have, my husband and I have 3 kids. Logan is just about to turn 15. Noelle is 13 and Genevieve is 9. So I have an elementary schooler, a middle schooler, and a high schooler, which definitely keeps me on my toes. And I own Forbidden Fiber Co., which is primarily a hand-dyed yarn company. And in the last few years, we've also been dyeing cross-stitch fabric and threads and designing patterns. And we do lots of fun themed kits and stuff like that. And that definitely keeps me busy. But I wouldn't want it any other way. I started knitting and cross stitching and all of the crafty things when I was little, when I was about 5 years old. My mom owned a craft store in San Diego, and that's where I learned how to knit and crochet and cross stitch and toll paint and sew and anything else you can think of. I've been doing since I was 5. In my 20s, I picked knitting back up right after I got married. I had extra time on my hands, and knitting was just kind of getting popular again. And from there, I learned to spin and to dye, and that's when Forbidden Fiber Co. was born in 2009. And then in 2019, I decided I wanted to spend, well, I didn't decide I wanted to spend a year knitting it, but I decided I wanted to knit a wedding dress to go down the runway at some fashion shows at fiber festivals I was vending at. And so I spent a year knitting a wedding dress. I'll put a picture right there. And after I was done with that, I was dealing with a lot of hand pain and just really did not want to see knitting needles anymore. And so I picked up cross stitch. I found my first FlossTube video, and it's just kind of exploded from there. And now I can't imagine doing anything else. So on this channel, you'll see a lot of cross stitch, some knitting, and this year I'm making my first bigger foray into crochet. So I'll be talking a little bit about that. I also love to read. If you know anything about my company, you know that I do a lot of things based on books. I get a lot of inspiration from it. So I also talk about my reading here. And yeah, that's what this little corner of the internet, as they say, is about. So grab a drink, grab a project, and let's talk about some stitching. The first project I have to show you, as always, is Marvel Heroes. And I am in a race to finish this year after 5. This is going to be my 6th year working on it in February at some point. And it's a gift for my husband. Hopefully I've already put a picture up there of what it's going to look like. It's by Popular Cross Stitch on Etsy. However, they are no longer in business the last I checked, but you might be able to find the artwork elsewhere. So I stitch on this 100 stitches a day. Now last year it was 50. This year I upped it to 100 to try to finish it. And that's where I'm at. Typically, I go in a 10 by 20 row across. So you can see I did this 10 by 20 row. I stopped there. And then Punisher is my husband's favorite character. So I decided to finish him before I keep going with this 10 by 20 row across the end. Sorry, it's so wobbly. So I've been working on the Punisher for about the last 2 months, and I'm getting close to being done. I still have a little bit in his logo, and he's got a belt down here, and then he's got some arm in there. And I'm working down this side of his shirt right now is what I've been focusing on. And then kind of filling in the confetti. Like I'll work up some block stitching here, and then I'll fill in a little bit of confetti every day just to try to get a little bit of both done. And yeah, since January 1st, I've stitched 734 stitches, and I have stitched a total of 81,898 stitches, and I'm at 77.85%. And what's actually kind of cool is, I'm going to brag on my husband for a little bit, is I'm over here stitching on the Punisher, which is his favorite character, and 2 days ago they just released the new Punisher logo for the Punisher, and he designed it, and it's so exciting. And they actually even gave him name credit, which they never do. And so I find it kind of fun. It's like full circle that I'm stitching on the Punisher, and they announced the logo that he worked so hard on and made a million different versions of, and they actually picked one of his. So it's very, very cool. My second focus piece in 2026 is Sea Glass by Carolyn Manning. I'll put a picture up there. And I'm also stitching 100 stitches a day on this until it's finished. So there's where I'm at. And I am just, each of these boxes is 9 stitches by 9 stitches. So what I'm doing is I'm doing just, I guess, a modified typewriter method where I'm picking stitches from symbols from top to bottom, left to right in that 9 by 9 block, and just stitching across the row. So I actually have quite a bit done over here. And I'm basically trying to finish, because there's 2 pages, and I did the first page, and now I'm working on the second page so I can keep going top to bottom. I'm getting ready to have to move the Q-snap because I'm gonna have to stitch over here soon. And then I just stitch out my thread. So I have gotten 737 stitches done on this since January 1st, and I have 10,408 stitches total for 39.66%. And I figure I'm stitching 100 stitches a day on it, but I have a lot of travel this year. So like Marvel, in order to finish by the end of the year, I really only need 75 stitches per day. But since I'm traveling a lot and it's not a portable project, I upped it to 100 to try to make up for that and still get it done in order to frame it and give it to my husband for Christmas. So this one, even though I have about 14,000 stitches left, which would make me done somewhere in the May time frame, I think it's going to be closer to August because of travel, which is fine. It's still going to get done, and I'm excited about that because I started this in May or June of 2020, so it's time to get it done. So yeah, so progress has just been along these rows, those 737 stitches. And I'm stitching this 2/1 14 count. This is a Silver Moon, Silver something, Ada, and Marvel is a 16 count, and it's 2/1 full cross. Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick little thing on my 2026 cross stitch rotation plans right here. I had wanted to make a separate video while I was off for the holidays, and it just never happened. I was enjoying my stitching time just a little too much and didn't want to stop and make a video. So before I get into the rest of my stitching, obviously I've told you about my 2 focus pieces this year, and when Sea Glass is finished, I plan to substitute in the next project that I want to finish, and I don't know what that is yet. I have some ideas, but I really want to see how much progress my rotation produces before I make a decision. I'm really trying to focus on my older pieces, and so likely it will be one of those older pieces, but it's also possible it will be a newer non-full coverage piece that it will just be easy to finish. So I had like grand plans of this 2026 rotation that I was going to do, where I was going to gamify it, and it was inspired by Jessie Marie Does Stuff and her, what did she call it? Milestone Manor. And I just thought that was so cool. And I love playing D&D, and our little group that we played with, we only got together about 5 or 6 times. So I'm a complete novice, but that group fell apart. And so I've just been itching to do some other type of game. And so I loved her milestone manner, but the longer I thought about it, the more I was like, well, that doesn't really fit in with how I want to view stitching this year, and I don't really like about that. So what if I make up my own thing and it's more of like a D&D type quest as opposed to let's go defeat the rooms in this house? And I thought up this whole storyline, and I was like, well, this could be this many points and this could be this, and the more I dove into it, I was like, no, that's going to be too much. I know I am not going to keep up with that. So I stripped it way down, and I have 2 wheels because I love me a good decision wheel. I have a full coverage wheel and I have a non-full coverage wheel. And my full coverage wheel has 2 levels of projects. One is a project that I have made a goal on, and typically this is going to be a number of pages that I want to finish. And the other level is a full coverage that I just want to see advance. And typically I got about 1,500 stitches on all of my full coverage projects last year, unless I was focusing on it. So for those projects that I don't have a goal on, a specific page goal on, that's what I would like to see. Is I'd like to see about 1,500 stitches progress on those. And then I have a list of 7 projects or so where I want to see significant progress. And those are going to be my older projects like Once Upon a Fairy Tale, Reader's Paradise, etc. as well. Oh, and my gift stitches, which are for my kids. Aside from Marvel, I have a full coverage piece I'm stitching for each of my kids. And so I have page finish goals on those. And then the Haid Stitch Along, I also am still trying to finish a page on that. Even though they already gave us the Amy Stewart chart, that was already written into my goal for the year. And I was like, you know what? I still want to get that page finished. So I'm sure I'll be talking about each of those projects more as I spin them and then stitch on them. So what I did was I weighted the full coverage projects that has a page finish goal. I weighted them twice what I weighted every other project on my wheel, so that's more likely to come up. And then as soon as I hit that page finish goal, then I will black it out on the wheel and keep going. The projects that don't have a page finish goal, as soon as I stitch on them, they black out so that I can rotate through all of them before stitching on them again. Then to get the number of stitches that I'm going to stitch on each project, I am using a roll of dice website. I actually do have physical dice, but I haven't gotten them out. I've just been using a website where I can roll a D20. So I roll a D20 and then I roll a D10. And so say I got 13 on the D20, then I roll the D10 and I get a 6. I multiply 13 times 60, and I should have picked easier numbers so that I could do that in my head, and I'm not even going to try. So let's say I rolled a 10, I would multiply it by 60 and I get 600 stitches. And so that is what you'll see as I go through my next few projects, how many stitches I stitched. And I just realized I forgot a project, so I'm going to go grab that. But, and then, so because I want to focus on full coverage this year, and I do have some pretty aggressive page finish goals, I spin my full coverage wheel twice, and then I will spin my non-full coverage wheel once, and I work on that project for 3 days. And I do have some of my non-full coverage pieces in Pattern Keeper, so I can still keep track of my stitches. But I talked a lot about it in my whip parade, I think, where numbers motivate me, progress motivates me. And so I've been going back and counting stitches on the projects that I don't even have in Pattern Keeper, just because, like I said, numbers motivate me. I'm an accountant by education and trade before I was a yarn dyer, so I'm just a numbers person. And so I do have a lot of numbers to talk about today. But I've really enjoyed it so far. It's only been a week and a half, and 4 of those days I was out of town. I'll talk about that when I get to the project I worked on while I was out of town. But yeah, let me go grab that project that I missed, because it's actually the first project I need to show you, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so my New Year, New Start this year was Amy Stewart's Sanctuary of Stitching. I think I have that name right. It could be Stitching Sanctuary, Stitcher's Haven. I've heard it called all kinds of names. I'll put a picture up there. And this was the bonus chart from Amy Stewart for participating in the Hayed Sal that we were supposed to have to complete one page in the Sal to get it later this year. But for whatever reason, they decided to go ahead and give it to everyone at the start. I guess from what I've seen, it's a little bit controversial of a move, but I, for one, was super excited to get to stitch on it all year. So it was my New Year, New Start, and I actually chose the Supersize Max color, which I swore all over the place that I would never ever do a Supersize Max color, but I realized that it's not even my biggest project. So that kind of put the intimidation factor down a little bit. I don't really like Max Color. I love the detail. I don't necessarily like stitching them because I don't love confetti. However, it just looked so much better. So I did get a start on it. And when I rolled my dice for how many stitches, typically I like to put 1,000 stitches into a new piece, but I was really itching to get started on my rotation. So I thought, well, why don't I just go ahead and put this into practice and let me roll. And I got 350 stitches. And there is my start. And I'm just starting in the top left-hand corner, and I am doing color completion by page. This is 25 count, Easy Guide Lugana, and I'm stitching 2 over 1/10 stitch. So, like I said, 350 stitches. I think I did two or three colors, and then I never ever do this, but because I'm playing the game, I dropped my thread right where it was, and I stopped at 350 stitches. The next project I spun, so I treated that as a wheel spin, and so then I spun my full coverage wheel again, and I spun the Hayed Sal, which I am doing Fairy Tale, and then I rolled my dice, and I got 390 stitches. So that is what I did, and again, I am color completing by page. So I worked a little bit of all over in a dark green. I'm not sure if you can tell it's dark green in the lighting or if it just looks like a lot of black, but I'm actually a little bit bummed because I already realized that I miscounted, and I'm gonna have to do a bunch of ripping in here. That's one stitch too far over, and the details in this building just feel too precise. They feel too precise to fudge it, so I am gonna go back and rip it probably the next time I stitch, and restitch those black and green areas. This is also 25 count Easy Guide Lugana, stitching 2 over 1/10 stitch. I talked a little bit about it in my whip parade, but I'm finding that my happy place for full coverage, at least at this point in time, is 25 count 2 over 1/10 or 28 count 1 over 1 full cross. So any of the new projects that I've started in the last few months should theoretically follow those guidelines is the wrong word, but follow that pattern. So after I finished my stitching on the Hayed Sal, I spun my non-full coverage wheel, and I spun Royal Holiday, which I was super excited about because my December stitching really didn't leave time for me to stitch on my Christmas pieces, and I was really, really looking forward to that. So I was really excited to see this. I would really, really love to finish this. It's too big of a goal for 2026, I think, when I'm trying to finish my Marvel Heroes piece, but it might be my finished goal for 2027. We'll see how it goes and how much progress I get on it this year. But I'm just going to show you this part right here because this is where I stitched. I worked on her hair, and I finished all of her hair here, and then I started in on her crown and did the top of her hair, and I finished the gold part of her crown, and now there's a bunch of leaves and like holly berries and stuff in her headdress, whatever you want to call it, and that's what I'm working on now. So I did count my stitches, and in 3 days I got 876 stitches. which is pretty good because they were busy days and I didn't get a whole lot of stitching time. So I was really happy with my progress. And obviously when I say I got it done, I still have to go back and do beads, but I did do the Krynic and all of the DMC full crosses. I'm stitching this 2/2 on a 32 count linen hand dyed by me, and I do not have a comparable color to this in the shop. I wish I did because I absolutely love this fabric color. I just can't get it again. So after I spent 3 days on Royal Holiday, I went back to my full coverage wheel and spun again, and I spun A Beautiful Place, which is artwork by Edward Jose Rosa. I finally remembered his name. I never ever do. It's charted by Stitches So Beautiful, and I spun 700 stitches. And I got it done. I actually got it done all in one day. It was, what day was that? It was Tuesday the 6th, which I was actually back at work and my kids were back at school. So I do not know how I had so much stitching time that day, but I did. And it helps that they're 10 stitches, they're half crosses. So I'm stitching this 2/1 10 stitch on 28 count, which it's a little, with how much confetti this piece has, it's a little tight for me. And that was one of the things that taught me I like 25 count for 10 stitch. And I am just working hard to try to complete this page. So I'm picking the symbols typewriter style in a 10 by 10 block, top to bottom, left to right, and trying to complete the page, but also just on this project, I'm stitching it out wherever it goes. So I don't remember exactly where my progress is, but hopefully you can see it. I know obviously there should be some progress in that page. I'm really close to a page finish, so I was kind of bummed to put it away without a page finish, and it will be a while before I get all the way through my wheel and can roll it again, but we'll see how it goes. The next spin on my wheel was for Once Upon a Fairy Tale, which is artwork by Amy Stewart and charted by Heaven and Earth Designs. I spun it on Wednesday, which I typically don't get much stitching time on Wednesdays because we go to church at night, and so I typically use that as a knitting day. But I did it anyway because on Thursday I left town. I went down to a Three Crows Fiber in Augusta, Georgia, and I did a trunk show there for the weekend, and I was really hoping to get some stitches in on Wednesday before I left, but I didn't. So that project is going to be my focus project starting tonight, and I spun 550 stitches, and that piece is max color, and that 550 stitches is probably going to take me a while, so we'll see how long I work on that before I spin again. But since I did not get to stitch on it, and I did want to take stitching with me, I spun my non-full coverage wheel again, and I got Words to Live by Tiny Modernist. Let's see if I can get it without the glare. That's what it's gonna look like when it's done. This was a stitch along, I don't know when, but I bought the pattern in 2020, and I think I started it in February or March. It's one of my oldest patterns, projects. I think it's after Marvel Heroes. This is my next oldest project. So I would really like to get this done. And when I finish Sea Glass, this is a contender for my next daily stitch. Like I said, I need to see where I'm at and how much time, what time of year it is, and you know, all the stuff I said before. So I brought this with me and stitched on it in the hotel, and I actually had quite a bit more stitching time than I thought I would, and I'm really happy with my progress. There's the whole thing, and then that's, oh, I folded some of it a little too much. There is where I'm working on in that middle block. It's actually the size of 4 of these blocks right there in the middle. And all I had done when I left was a little bit of these. I had this white part, I had a little bit of this mountain and these trees, and I can't remember if I had I think I might have had one wedge of the sun done, But I finished the mountains. I did not finish the trees. I still have a few trees down here to go. And I did the whole sun. I did this side of the little frame, and I started on the hot air balloon. And in total, oh, and I also got this into Pattern Keeper, and it won't search the symbols, but thanks to Tanya, I think she's Stitching Addicted here on YouTube and on Instagram, but if I'm wrong, I'll put it across the screen. But she was telling me about how she gets her mirabilias into, she uses markup, but she was telling me how she did it. And so I tried to get this one into markup by using the camera feature, and it wouldn't go. I just couldn't get the grids straight. But when I got home, I was able to get it into Pattern Keeper, and it won't search the symbols, but I can mark them off. And so that's super exciting. I just put this 4 block in there, and then after that, I can hopefully keep getting each of these blocks in here. I don't know why I never thought of using the camera feature. I think because I have the PDF, I thought, well, I should just be able to load the PDF in there. But yeah, that was super exciting. And I did 2,227 stitches on this while I was gone. And then I also worked on it some last night. I got back yesterday at about 12:30 in the afternoon. And so I got some stitching time at night, and I got to work on this some more. And that was my 3rd day. I'm stitching this 2/2 on a 32 count even weave of some sort, and it's hand dyed by me. It was just when I was learning to dye, so I don't necessarily have a comparable colorway in the shop, but it would look amazing on blackboard, which is our darkest black fabric. This is closer to charcoal, but not quite the same. So that is all my stitching that I got done over the last 10 days or so. And I have a lot of knitting to show. I can't say that I've been knitting more than usual, but since I haven't had an update since November, I have a lot more to show because in December, I really just stitched on those pieces that I showed as finishes in my Whip Parade. So if you're curious what I did, go check out my Whip Parade. In the first 10 minutes or so, I showed everything that I finished last year, which included the 2 pieces I finished in December, which was Sleigh Ride and Frosty by Mill Hill. And then also I worked a lot on Marvel Heroes, and I started a few new projects, which would be at the end of my Whip Parade. But yeah, knitting wise, I'm sorry, I sang a little too loud in the car on the way home from Georgia yesterday, and I've kind of lost my voice. So finished objects for knitting. This is my Avenue pullover. I don't know if I've shown this on the channel at all, but I test knit this for Tori U, and I'll put up a little video of me wearing it because I'm going to talk about the fit in a second. But it is a raglan style pullover. But I can't remember, it's got contiguous sleeve shaping. So as you get down, the raglan curve changes to fit better. And like I said, I test knit this, and I absolutely love this pattern. I love the detail on the collar, where it's a 1x1 ribbing, but then right before you bind off, you knit a row, and then you do a regular bind off. And I just feel like the detail is really neat, instead of having to do like a sewn bind off to make a more professional looking finished edge. I really love that she's leaning into that handmade edge, and she did it on the sleeves too, and on the bottom hem. And I knit this using my Fortitude DK base, which is just my workhorse DK yarn. I've used it a lot lately, and I really, really, really love it. And it is in the colorway Night Triumphant, which is part of my Night Court collection from ACOTAR. And I love the little variegated blues in there. This type of tonal yarn is the yarn that I live for. Like, I am a sweater knitter at heart. I always have been. And I just love that movement. They're my favorite kind of colors to dye. They're my favorite kind of colors to knit with. And yeah, so fit-wise, this is where I'll try to post a video up here. I guess they call it B-roll if I want to be all pro. I messed something up along the way, and when I was increasing for the raglan, I missed some increases in the sleeves, and I swear upon everything that I counted and counted and counted, and before I separated for the sleeves and put it onto waist yarn, I swear I counted, but I apparently did not, because I am 10 stitches short on each sleeve, which is a good 2 inches. And I thought it would be fine because I thought I had enough ease in the sweater. I knit a size 4, I want to say. I usually knit a size 3, but I feel like for this one I knit a size 4, and I usually bake in a good 2 to 3 inches of positive ease because that's what I like my sweaters to wear. And I thought it would be fine, but the sleeves are really tight. And then on top of that, I feel like it's a little too short on me. And so I'm just really debating. I have tons of extra yarn left. I'm really debating on whether or not I'm gonna rip the sleeves back and add, even if I just add an extra 5 stitches under the arm or somewhere, increase somewhere, it would give me a little bit of room. My problem is that when I'm wearing it, it's fine. But the second I go to lift my arms, because the arms are so tight and because it's a little bit too short in the torso, I feel like the whole sweater goes up with me when I lift my arms, and nobody needs to be seeing that. So I'm really debating on whether or not I am going to rip back and add some length and add some extra circumference on the sleeves. If you have any thoughts, tell me in the comments. I really feel like for a sweater that I spent almost a month knitting, I feel like I should be willing to do that, because I'm really worried that I will not wear it. Despite how much I love this color, I'm really worried I won't wear it if I don't do that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Avenue pullover. But Tori Yu is a fantastic designer. This is the second pattern that I have knit, and my mom has also made a skyline tee. Her patterns are phenomenal, and I think she's got a new one coming out too that I really love. The next project I have to show you should be a finished object, but it is not, because I lost Yarn Chicken. This is my Prospect pullover, and I knit this in the smallest size because it has a lot more ease built into it, and so I felt like the smallest size was the one that I wanted. And I've shown this on a previous video. I'm knitting it with the Gathering Hour from the Bramble collection, and I just love the mix of texture. And like I said, it's another one of those gently variegated, I call them tonals, but the industry as a whole tends to call them variegateds, but the type of color that I live for. But there is my Yarn Chicken. I have 2 more rows of ribbing, 2 more rounds of ribbing, and a bind off. And again, it's not a sewn in bind off. It's just a regular bind off. And I ran out of yarn, and I refuse to wind up a new skein. And so I knew we had some leftovers from creating swatches in a fingering weight. And I also know that I can double a fingering weight and get a DK weight. And so I was frantically searching for the leftovers and couldn't find them. My mom knits all my swatches for me and crochets my swatches, and I thought she had it. She thought it was at the studio, couldn't find it anywhere. And I came in here during my Christmas break, and I don't know, I think I was cleaning off my bookshelves, which are over there. And I found it. I found the bag of yarn with all the Bramble collection swatch leftovers. And so I just haven't, I was so focused on finishing the Avenue pullover and then working on the next project that I have to show you, that I just haven't gone back and finished. But I'm gonna try to do that this week so I can finally block it and wear it, because it's freezing right now. The last knitting project I have to show you is the Mochi Slipover. It's by Vert Knits. She's on Instagram and on Ravelry. And I am knitting this out of Unlimited from my Wicked collection that we just had up for pre-order, and it's down now, but we'll have an in-stock update later this spring. And give you a close-up of the yarn, another one of those tonal colors that I love. And I went back and knit the collar after knitting. Typically I like to go back after I split for the sleeves, or in this case, bound off for the sleeve, or sleeveless because it's a vest. And I tried helical knitting for the first time, and my opinion is as yet unformed. I don't love pooling, I don't know. So there is definitely some pooling in that. And I just don't know if it's gonna bother me when I wear it or not. This is my ideal. And like I said, I tried helical knitting for the first time, which is where you knit from 2 balls. And yeah, I did modify this. The pattern calls for just 6 1/4 inches underneath the arm before you start the ribbing. And I'm tall, I'm about 5'8", 5'9", but all of my height is in my torso. My legs are like regular, like the same as any other person who's like 5'6", 5'5". All of my height is in my torso. And so I need a good 13 inches minimum. And so this 9 inches was not gonna cut it for me. So I basically knit an extra, I knit to 9 inches, I think. 10 inches. I knit to 10 inches underneath the armhole before I started my 2.5 inches of ribbing. And I finished the ribbing. I just have to do the sewn bind off, but I'm gonna need a good 3-hour chunk of time to do that sewn bind off, and I just haven't had it yet, so that's why it's as yet unfinished. My problem is that I should have measured how long the armhole is, because I feel like this is a little bit longer than a traditional armhole because it's a vest. However, that might scrunch up when I do the ribbing, but I'm worried that it's gonna be too long now. And with a sewn bind off, I am not gonna wanna go back and rip, because you essentially have to cut. I think it's gonna be okay because I don't mind it when things are longer, but I hate it when things are shorter. So we'll see. But like I said, I need a good 3-hour chunk of time before I can bind this off. And then I need to do the sleeves. But I have a lot of waiting to do today. We have play rehearsal and soccer practice and our first guitar lesson for my 9-year-old today. So there's gonna be a lot of waiting, and I might go ahead and pick up the sleeve before, not the sleeve, it's just ribbing, but I might pick that up and do that and see before I attempt the sewn bind off, because if I'm gonna have to rip some of this ribbing out, I would rather do it now. As much as I don't wanna reknit 1 by 1 twisted rib, 2.5 inches of it, I would rather do it now than later. So yeah, that's the Mochi Slipover by Vert Knit in the Unlimited colorway. And I knit a size 3, which is, no, I knit a size 5. But I don't think I printed out the page that tells me exactly what those measurements are. So I can't tell you that, but I did knit a size 5. So this vest either just has a ton of sizes. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's a 38 to 40 bust circumference, which is right about what I am. So yeah. I don't know if I said it, but I'm also knitting, all 3 of those are on my Fortitude DK base. The Mochi Slipover is knitted a slightly smaller gauge, so I'm using a US 4 needle instead of a US 5 or 6, which is my typical go-to for like the Tori Yu 2 sweaters that I'm knitting from her. That gauge is a little bit looser, so I did play with the needle size a little bit there. That is my knitting, and then like I said, I'm doing my very first crochet projects now for 2026, and I'm super excited. The first one I'm doing, I took all of the leftover mini skeins that I had in the studio from past Halloween boxes, past advent calendars, just ones where I didn't have a full set. And then I also took my full set of advent minis from this year that I had fully intended to crochet along on social media with everybody opening their advent box. And then December just got too crazy and I couldn't do it. But I am making a modified Battenberg blanket. So there is my square. And if you are a crocheter, please do not tell me everything that I did wrong in this, because I'm pretty proud of it. I am a very baby crocheter. So this is the solid granny square that the Battenberg blanket calls for, except I took a note from Nitty Natty and I doubled the yarn so it's a DK gauge instead of a fingering weight gauge. And then I just added a ton of rounds. So each square unblocked so far is 6.25 inches. And I am making a blanket for my husband so that he has plenty of blankets. However, none of them are as big as my patchwork blankets. I have 2 patchwork blankets that were done in the Harry Potter style. One is an actual replica that my mom found a pattern for and made for me. And then the other one is where some friends and I just did a make along, and some of the blocks are crocheted, some are knit. We just picked a general color palette and we would all make a square, and then everybody would send them to me. And there were 13 to 15 people in the group. Everyone would send them to me and I would jumble them all up and send them back out. So everybody got 1 square of each. And we did that for several rounds. And then my mom took pity on me because I hadn't joined them together after years and years, and she joined them all together for me. So I have these 2 massive blankets. One, my make-along blanket that has all the squares for my friends is almost the size of our king-size bed. And then the one my mom made for me is not that much smaller. And my husband's a big guy. He's 6'3" and very broad-shouldered and just long legs. And so he doesn't like any of our blankets that are smaller, and he always likes to steal mine. Well, I have one in my stitching chair and I have one on the bed, and I don't want him to steal mine because they have specific uses and I don't like looking for a blanket when I need one. So I'm making him his own, but depending on my joining method and depending how big these squares get when they block, I'm gonna need about 300 squares. And I currently spend a lot of time ripping because counting is hard and I am a baby crocheter. So each block currently takes me a little over an hour. I've made 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to be a year-long project, and maybe, fingers crossed, if I can keep up a block-ish a day, I'll have a blanket and a Marvel Heroes finished framed project for him for Christmas present. We'll see how it goes though. I do like that this is a very portable project because I can just wind up a few mini skeins and put it in a small project bag and a crochet hook, and then I can take that with me when I travel instead of a big knitting project. So I'm highly considering doing that this year. Particularly, we are taking an extended family vacation overseas this year, and I know traveling with knitting needles can be iffy when you're going international, but I think a crochet hook might be safe. So I might even take this with me when we go, and I could probably get a lot done on 13-hour flights and lots of train rides, and we'll see. But yeah, I found these cute little baskets at the Container Store. They're actually handmade. So each one, they don't even all match, like they're all different sizes. So this project is living in there on the shelf on my nightstand. So yeah, what I'm gonna do when I fill this up with blocks, because 300 blocks is a lot, I don't know. I should mention also, I'm doing this blanket with my friend Marcy. She is Amnicon Studio on YouTube, and she has a blog on Blogspot and on Instagram, and she is doing a Battenberg style blanket out of worsted weight yarn. So that's super fun to add that make along component to it. We've had lots of fun chatting over our block woes as we figure this process out. And then my second crochet project for the year is just a traditional granny square style blanket. And what I'm doing is each of those Battenberg style blankets, blanket squares, takes about 16 grams of my 20-gram minis. So what I'm doing is then I'm taking the rest of it and I'm making a tiny granny square. And these are about 4 inches, I think, and these ones I've actually already blocked. So some of them are solid and some of them have multiple colors. It just depends on how much yarn I have. I haven't weighed these to see exactly how much yarn it takes, but here's one where I did, this one took forever. I did a different color every round. And like I said, it just depends on how much yarn I have left. But I'm just using scraps. These are scraps from all of the Advent projects, and these were a Valentine's Day project. I knit a sweater for my daughter Noelle that she didn't want. But I have scraps, and I just have so many scraps. And so while I was waiting for Marcy to figure out her yarn for the Battenberg blanket, I started making these squares. And then as I tested my squares for Battenberg, I was like, oh my gosh, I have almost exactly enough yarn to make a little crochet square, a little granny square. So this is a very long-term project. It is very secondary to the Battenberg style blanket. And just something fun. I've been wanting to learn how to crochet better for years, and I've just never placed it high enough up on my priority list. And 2026 is going to be the year where I get more comfortable with crochet, because I'm seeing more and more very cute crochet patterns. And I love the idea of being versatile, of being able to knit and crochet, and particularly because I meet a lot of crocheters, and I wouldn't say I feel bad not being able to talk crochet with them, but I feel like I could connect with people that I meet at fiber festivals a whole lot better if I actually crocheted too. So that's just a bonus, I guess, of actually learning and knowing. So yeah. Books. I've already been talking for a really long time, and like I said, I don't even have that much of a voice. So I'll try to be quick about books. I actually only read 5 books pretty much since the last time I filmed. I got into a huge reading rut. I read maybe 50 pages total during my 2.5-week break of work. Normally I listen to books, and during the month of December, things were so busy and my brain was just so full of everything I had to do, the collections that I was putting out, having to reorganize the studio to take inventory, and make room for all the 2026 plans I have. Like, my brain was just too full and I just couldn't pay attention to books listening. And then I was too tired at the end of the day. And so really at work, I was just listening to music, and at home, I was watching Vlogmas most of the time, or I was listening to music, or I would watch something with my kids while I stitched or knit or whatever. So I really didn't start listening or reading again until the beginning of the year. And I picked out something completely new that wasn't in my TBR list or my huge physical TBR pile that I've got next to my bed. And I read Star of Persia by Jill Eileen Smith, and it's biblical fiction. It is basically it's not a retelling, it's the actual telling of the story of Esther, but it dives way deep into, I hesitate to call them characters because they're not, they were real people, but into the characters in the book of Esther, the people who lived at the time. You know, it was Esther and Mordecai and King Ahasuerus and King Xerxes and just everyone. And it was just really, really well done. I feel like I understand what happened in the book of Esther so much better. And even though the motivations that the author added are all speculation, you know, we don't really know what these characters were thinking or feeling. One of the things that I thought was really well done is King Xerxes really mourned the loss of Vashti, his wife. It talked about how much he loved her and how much he regretted sending her away, and how it was he had gotten drunk and he was egged on by an advisor who was not acting in his best interest, was acting in the best interest of his, I guess she was a concubine, but she wanted to be queen. And she was jealous of Vashti, and I can't remember her name. And I can't remember if she actually exists in the Bible either, or if she's a completely made up character. But I just thought that was so cool. And it Esther and her anxiety over these things that she was having to do to save her people. And it was just amazing. And I want to read everything that Jill Eileen Smith wrote. And I haven't gotten there yet. I started in on some other things as I wait for Libby to have other stories available. But about a year ago, 6 months ago maybe, I thought, you know, I really want to understand the Old Testament better. And so I started looking into biblical fiction, and I found quite a bit. And this is the first one that I ever really dove into. And yeah, it was just amazing. I highly recommend it if you are into biblical fiction or even just historical fiction. The next book I read was The Curiosity Keeper by Sarah E. Ladd. Complete 180, still historical fiction, but I want to say there's a magic realism element to it, but there wasn't. Basically, and I didn't write down the characters' names, and you know me, I never remember people's names because I read too fast. But he is from a wealthy, prominent family, and they have this ruby called the Bevoy Ruby, and it is their last hope because the father has lost all of their fortune, and the daughter needs a dowry to get married and continue on the family and the estate, and it has been stolen. And so the son goes looking for it and goes to the shop where the dad bought it and meets the girl, and she's just helping her dad out, and doesn't know anything about the Bevoy Ruby or where it could be. And the shop ends up getting robbed, and she gets hurt, and the guy basically comes to her rescue, and she goes back the next day. The dad had left her alone, and she goes back the next day, and the dad is so mad at her for leaving the shop, even though it had been ransacked and she had been beaten. He was mad at her for leaving and blamed her and kicked her out. And so the guy invites her to come back to their estate and to get her a job at a local school, teaching shopkeeping and other skills that the girls might be able to use. And so she goes, and then the mystery unfolds, and they keep hunting for this Bevoy Ruby. And it was pretty good. I have to say, I don't remember a lot of the details. Again, I feel like my brain was just on overload, and I probably wasn't paying as close of attention as I should have been to remember all of the details. Like, for example, in the end, when a character comes back that you thought was a good guy, turns out he's in league with the bad guys. Could not for the life of me remember him from where earlier in the story he was. So yeah, but it was good. I recommend it. It was good. I think I gave it 3 stars, maybe 4 stars, and the only reason why I gave it that score and not something higher was my own inability to pay attention. Next, I listened to Edge of Defiance and Edge of Survival, and I actually listened to these on my drive down to Georgia for my trunk show. I had an 8-hour drive, and I was by myself, so you know I cranked that audiobook as high as I could, and I listened on 1.75 speed. And this is the Edge of Chaos series that I started last year. This was book 5. Edge of Defiance was book 5, and it was supposed to be the end of the series, but the author stated that the characters were still speaking to her, and she had a couple of other storylines she wanted to wrap up. So she wrote books 6 and 7, and so I read book 6 while I was in Georgia at night while I was stitching. And book 7 has a 2-week wait still on Libby, so I'm waiting for that one. I really liked these. So the story is you have Liam and Hannah. Hannah was kidnapped, and she had been held hostage for 5 years, and she was 9 months pregnant. And Liam is an ex-soldier, and he was on his way to Chicago with his twin brother and his twin brother's wife, who was also 9 months pregnant. And an EMP struck, and Hannah was freed because the electricity holding her locks let go, and her kidnapper was hours away, and so she ransacked the house, got everything she could, and some cross-country skis because it's Michigan in the middle of the winter, and she takes off and escapes, and somewhere along the way meets Liam, who had been in the car when the EMP hit, and his brother and wife died different times, but Liam had to cut the baby out of his sister-in-law before she died, and he took the baby, brought it to the sister-in-law's parents, and left the baby with them to raise, and then took off. And then Hannah and Liam meet in the woods somewhere while they're both trying to get to where they're going, and they kind of band together and help each other through, and then everything dissolves into chaos. You know, there's different factions trying to gain power and control, and so Edge of Defiance kind of wrapped up the original storyline, and then edge of survival is what happens after that. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but I really enjoyed both of them and cannot wait for the 7th book to become available so I can listen to that too. And then the last book I listened to was another complete 180, Murder Simply Brewed by Vanetta Chapman. It's an Amish cozy mystery. I do love me some Amish cozy mysteries. And basically there's this Amish village full of stores where the English and the Amish kind of partner together to create a tourist destination. I think it's in Indiana, maybe Ohio. And the owner of the coffee shop gets murdered. And Hannah is, oh, another Hannah. She is Amish and she works in the quilt shop, and she finds him. And so it's about her taking over as the manager of the coffee shop while they try to regroup and solve his murder. And then you have Amber, who is the manager of the entire village, and her neighbor, I can't remember his name, and basically they're the ones trying to solve the murder that was ruled as a heart attack, and they know something else is going on. So I actually just finished that book last night. It was really sweet. I think I gave it 4 stars. It definitely kept my attention. My mind didn't wander the way it did with some of these other books. So yeah, and then also I just wanted to know, I'm doing a devotional. It's called It Is Well. It's from Daily Grace Company. And I just bought it through their website on sale when I bought my Advent devotional. And it's an anxiety devotional, and it just takes you through scripture to help you deal with your anxiety. And I've found it pretty good. I don't have like general anxiety where like I'm just anxious in general and I need medication. Mine is more situational anxiety where I just get stressed, and that brings anxiety, and I feel out of control, and yet I need to be in control at the same time, and it's just not working for me. And so I typically haven't had a lot of luck with Daily Grace Co. devotionals and Bible studies. I really have always felt like they just didn't dive deep enough for me. It was too surface level, and I wasn't getting anything out of them. But I did their Advent study this year. And if you're interested, Alicia from Adventures of Stitching, in her Vlogmas, she really went through, she did the same devotional that I did, and she went through day by day and kind of what she had taken away from it. But I really loved that study. So I thought I'd give this one a try too. It came recommended from a book lover, Amanda. She's a Christian fiction, clean fiction booktuber, and she recommended it. She's a Daily Grace Co. ambassador. And I'm really enjoying it so far. I still have about 4 or 5 days left, but there's been some good takeaways in it for me. So hopefully I'll be finishing that this week. And I just wanted to add that in there because I am reading it. I read it every night before I go to bed and, you know, journal a little bit. I have already been talking for a very long time, and I know I have some edits out, but I'm guessing this video is about an hour already. So I won't be too lengthy on the shop update section, but we're working our way through the end of the year sale orders. I think we're about 2/3 of the way through them now. And then when I go back into the office tomorrow, I'm going to be finishing dyeing up all of the Wicked collection pre-orders, and we are also hard at work on all the Wicked Sal. It's called the Obsessulated Sal. We took pre-orders on the kits, which includes the floss and fabric, and that's what we're working on now, but you can still get the PDF pattern. I'm not sure how many extras of the kits we'll have to put back in the shop once we ship, but you are welcome to join with just purchasing the PDF. And I'll put a thing up there with the first, the first download, what it looks like. I want to say it's 13 parts, and the first part, you get this first part when you purchase, and it's immediately downloadable, and you'll get the full DMC floss list and stitch count so you can plan how much you need. And it takes a fat quarter of fabric, and we're just stitching it on a neutral. And the first full clue drops February 1st, and then it will be every Monday after that, February 2nd, whatever that first Monday in February is. And then I'm also I just started promoting the Midwinter Conservatory collection, which is my winter yarn collection. I'm really excited about it. I spent a long time developing the perfect shades. And I have a story that goes along with it if you want to go. I have it posted on Instagram and Facebook, just a little narrative that I made up. And this collection is about Ivy, and she tends to a greenhouse, a conservatory in the winter that her grandmother tended and her grandmother before that tended. And so it's kind of been passed down, and you know, it's just about breathing new life and how there's always light in the darkness, even when things seem empty in the wintertime, there's always light. So yeah, the trunk show that I did this weekend was really fun. Three Crows Fiber in Augusta, Georgia. They're now carrying my yarn. They kept everything that didn't sell, and so they have a good selection of fingering weight and DK weight. If you are anywhere in that area, go see them. It's a really cute little shop, and everybody's super nice. And then the third weekend in February, I'm blanking on the dates, is Fiber Fun in the Sip in Vicksburg. And I'm just going to have a little booth there, but I'm going to be bringing some of the Wicked collection and the Midwinter Conservatory collection. And I think I'm going to bring Dawn Court, which will be releasing that weekend. And it's the last court in my ACOTAR collection. So that will finish out that whole collection that I've been working on for the last year, almost a year and a half. And then the weekend after that, which is the last weekend in February, is Scenic Stitches in Chattanooga. And I'll be there with the full Wicked collection and probably all of the court collections from ACOTAR. And I'm not sure what else at this point. I have ideas and thoughts, but I need to see what fits. So yeah, that is all of the shop updates. If you have made it this far, tell me what you're reading, or drop me just a little book emoji. I thank you for stopping in. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. And I will see you again, hopefully next Monday. It is Martin Luther King Day, which means my kids will be home, which makes it a little bit harder to film, but we'll see how it goes. Bye.